So greetings, Elder Abena, Ginelle, Skerrit. I give thanks, I give thanks, I give thanks for all that you do for our community and your leadership as a community stalwart, as a wife, as a mother, as an executive, as a leader who's transformed communities since I've known you for decades in Canada. So I give thanks for you being part of our series, When Elders Speak. And I don't want to butcher your bio by any means, but I want to make sure that I can edify the people with the breadth and your body of work. I'd love for you to introduce yourself, please.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me, and I hope all is well with you and your family and all of your pursuits. I wish you the best. And so, just by way of introduction, I think you did a pretty good job. I've been working in community and for community since I would say my high school days, and that's a long time. And I continue to be involved and engaged in the progress for the liberation of our people in any way that I can be. And so right now I do so by running a susu, and we have very many tiers to introduce people to the concept of collective economics. And then I'm also supporting young people who want to be entrepreneurs, connecting. It's part of my mission, and my purpose is to really try to make those connections for people in our community, active in the space with people who are differently housed, underhoused. I'm trying to link the two, the SUSU savings, to helping people save money for a down payment so we can own our home and fulfill that sort of idea of sustainable self-determination around housing. Also involved because we live on a farm, a 42-acre farm in New Lowell, Ontario, which is a rural area about 1 hour north of Toronto. And so we offer opportunities for food sovereignty work to be done with us on the farm. So people come up and use the property to grow, and we ourselves are growing crop of garlic. I'm dabbling with some other entrepreneurs in getting into the producing herbs, growing them here, hydroponics, that sort of stuff. So I'm learning. I'm on a steep learning curve with respect to that because I am not a green thumb, but I think that it is one of those challenges that we need to take up for the future sustainability of our communities, because food prices are expected to go up and our food sources are questionable in terms of the nutritional value and so on. So definitely dabbling there. And I'm involved also in doing retreats for women. So looking at spiritual development, leadership issues, and just the stress. I was having a conversation with a sister today about exhaustion, but we don't know exactly where it comes from, right? So we know we're tired, but we don't know, we can't pinpoint to this is what's doing it or that's what's doing it. So, talking about that. And I guess finally, the space at Adinkra Farm, we're involved in making that available to community as a place for community to gather. And so we're in the midst of some renovations and things like that now, so that the space would be welcoming for people in our community. So that's kind of a little bit about what I do.
That's absolutely remarkable, the way you're weaving together not just food sovereignty, affordable housing, community economic development through SUSU, mental well-being, but also youth development. And you're doing all this while taking on so much on behalf of our community. So once again, you make our ancestors proud, and you are someone that me and my wife have looked up to for many, many decades. So we give thanks for your leadership and sharing all that work with such grace and humility. My first question to you is, what do you feel are or is the characteristics of good eldership in our community?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it is a function of it is maturity. And when I say that, I'm not just talking about age, I'm talking about an ability to really be selfless in your thinking and action. And that comes with maturity because, well, as human development goes, you really spend a lot of time in a self-centered space as a young person, and as your world expands you get to see what else is there. So I think it's critically important that elders have that scope of vision that goes beyond the self and beyond the issues at hand, because sometimes people come to you to help solve problems. So we've had people come to talk to us about relationships, to talk to us about business opportunities, about overall life direction. And so when you hold that position that other people decide to contact you or ask you to share your wisdom, I think cherishing that and really keeping the scope of your thinking broad and wide is an important factor of in being an elder. And I still have some hesitation because I think of myself as very young. And, you know, we make that association between eldership and youth, but really I am growing into a learning in a space where the eldership is something that I'm appointed to by the people who consider me to be an elder. And so, in that regard, I am claiming it and trying my best to act in that role. Mm-hmm.
Ashe, Ashe, I give thanks. The way you frame the characteristics of eldership around selflessness and sacrifice and being of service to community is a perfect segue to my next question. What role do you feel elders play in community? You spoke about mediation and governance, but in a healthy community and village, what role do you feel is essential that elders play?
I think elders play an important role in providing a grounding, a sense of, it's the word I'm looking for, you know, that there's something there that's reliable that you can count on, because that's the role I think we've been thrust into. And I say we because I'm including my husband in that people call us for advice, for guidance. I can tell you that because of the type of work that we are known for, which is another thing, eldership is about being out there interacting and relating with community so that people will know why they need to come to you. And that has proven to be the case, that people come to us and say that they can rely on us for certain types of information because of what they see happening with us. So I'll give you a very quick example. Because we've been active in the space of talking about anti-Black racism and talking about what it means to walk in this world as an authentic African person living in the diaspora, people come to us. So I get calls for fashion advice. and it may seem trivial, but the wearing of our garments proudly is something that was taken away, not encouraged. But when people want to, they say, you know, I'm ready to take that step. I get calls, I give referrals. I get called on work situations because they know that, you know, I've worked in leadership positions in different sectors and they want advice on that. Relationship advice. If people are buying a property, you've done it. How do you do this? I get calls about how does the susu work? I've had 3 other people start susus because of the ones that we're running. So I think it is being an example and being a reliable source of good information that is really how it plays out practically.
Absolutely. I give thanks for all those actionable insights and moving from theory to the actual practical application of what eldership looks like. My next question, once again, perfect segue. How can community members honor elders within our community?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I think that there are some of our elders that we are neglecting. Mm-hmm. Or that have been silenced by the ravages of being in the struggle for so long. And they may be sick, maybe they're alone, they've lost a spouse. So one of the ways that we honor our elders is to check in on them, to visit them, right? To spend time with them, to invite them to our events. I think we need in the diaspora, I mean, I've visited Ghana and I've seen the way that eldership is treated in certain circles there. And I think we need to replicate some of that where there's a place for elders in ceremony.
Mhm.
And so I think that would be a formal way that we could bring honor to eldership. I think asking their opinion about important stuff that we're doing in our community, and also listening to their stories honors them, honors their journey. And many times when I've been in company of people that are middle-aged or older that have been around the block that maybe might be considered elders in our community, one thing that we see is that we haven't done a good job of telling our stories, of sharing those things. And so sometimes as we watch the younger group come along, we can see, okay, if they go down that road, this is what's going to happen. But they don't know that they can come to us to ask. They don't feel that there is a support. So we've been putting ourselves in check around, okay, so maybe we've shied away from the title of elder or taking that title, but maybe we need to put ourselves out there so that they know we're there for them. So one of the ways that we've been doing that is actually going out and saying and doing active succession planning, so that when we have, we always lament, where are the young people? We didn't get them out here to this meeting or that meeting, or they didn't come to this event or that event. And that's probably because we were only talking to each other about it. So you need to really be active. And then when we have economic opportunities, we hire the young people and we say, look, come, I've been asked to facilitate a workshop here that I know that the young person I'm hiring has never done anything like that, but how are they going to learn if they don't come and be my assistant at this? And I say, yeah, take the marker, go over there and record what those people are saying and ask them a few questions to help them, so I'm coaching is one of those ways. But anyway, I think including elders in ceremony, visiting them and listening to their stories are key ways that we can honor elders. But to my point, I think elders have a role to play in being available, making themselves available and putting themselves out there to actively be in a place where people will honor them because, hey, you were here for me. And so I want to thank you for that. I want to honor you with that. Yeah.
Those are remarkable insights in terms of succession planning and intergenerational collaboration. It's so important in these times that we live in with such pervasive problems and challenges. A lot of times, performative statements like social finance and social innovation are used. And because we spoke about economic development earlier, community economic development in the form of SUSU, and right now we use terms like social finance, impact investing, and social innovation. A lot of our work at SETC has been around pushing the envelope around these things. And the fact that social innovation isn't just a theory. A lot of folks across the global South have to do social innovation out of the space of survival. So when our colleagues and I saw the work that you've been doing around SUSUs, one, it hit home for me because my mother was a SUSU banker for over 30 years. But more importantly, when I saw the Banker Ladies documentary, it was just inspiring. It gave me goosebumps. I'd love for you to share a little bit more around the SUSU and Banker Ladies work that you've been facilitating around community economic development and the way peoples of African descent have organized their economic relationships since time immemorial.
Absolutely. It is an inspiration to me to think back in my own family about how SUSU worked. And that's where the inspiration and the belief in its effectiveness comes. So first of all, talking about entrepreneurship and all of these wonderful ways that we describe things, social finance and so on, our ancestors were the architect of those things, because I can tell you that my grandmother had her own business as a seamstress. She sewed clothes. In addition, she ran a roti shop, and yeah, and she tutored and taught children lessons after school in exchange sometimes for different things, not necessarily funds, because funds was not the only form of exchange for value that was happening in those times. So the idea of a collective effort for the benefit of community is what Susu is about. And many times when I talk to people who are in the financial world, well, Fususu doesn't make sense because you're not making any interest on it. But I would challenge that, because the interest does not necessarily come in a percentage of the funds. The interest comes in the trust that you're building in community, the resiliency that you're building in community, and the actual value that all of that brings to community. So I think we as African people have to understand a different set of values on which our economic success is based. Of course, we have to have almost be able, like everything else, to talk two different languages. So we have to be able to understand and function in a capitalist society. But when we look at the ways we've traditionally structured economics, it hasn't always been about create more, build more, profit being the motive. That is a model that is not something that's in. We have more of a subsistence model, a cooperative model, a collaborative model when we think about economics. And that's where the beauty of the Susu comes in. So in my own story, my mom came to this country with Susu money, right? And I had been telling the story for so long, and I would say that she raised $600. So the other day I was in Florida with her and chatting, and I was describing, and she said, "No, Ginelle, $20 I came to Canada with. $20. But her airfare and those kinds of things were raised through the Susu." So I have to correct that in my story now, to be honest. And it makes her story even more remarkable, because then she went on to buy her first house within 3 years of moving here through Susu funds, with the Grenadian woman, the Guyanese woman, the other Trini, and the Jamaican, who were all working together in the same office. So they decided, and one by one, they pooled and put together at the time, it was only $3,000 to put a down payment on a house. And she also told me, interestingly enough, that a full cart of groceries at that time cost $25 for a family of 4. I know, I was thinking, whew, okay. But the point being that they helped each other, they built. All of those women bought houses within 5 years. And they all were able to pass that on to the children in their family, that idea of home ownership and support from people. I can tell you also that it was more than just about sharing money. Because when we were young and my mom wanted us to have piano lessons, it was Auntie Chloe that said, "I have a piano sitting in my living room. You can have it for the children so that they can learn." And so the way of living together has much more value than the money. Okay, so I'd like to segue, because having said that, that we live in a society where money talks, right? And so doing our Susu, when I first did the calculations and I realized that the number of groups we have, we're moving something like $200,000 in our community. So, when we talk about our community being not wealthy, I know it's not, that's in half a year and then another half a year. So in 2 years, it's almost $1 million that we're talking about. So we've been asking some interesting questions, like, what if instead of us taking a hand out and using it for personal, we pool those resources and we buy things together, or we invest together, or we start businesses together. So those are some of the ways that we're hoping to expand the Susu concept.
I love that. That's incredible. And it really speaks to the work of our ancestors and all those community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on in terms of how they organize their economic relationships. This is my second last question for you. And I thank you for your transparency, vulnerability, and strength throughout this conversation. I really appreciate you. Right now at SETSI, a lot of our work is really trying to unpack ecosystems. And when we look at land access in Canada, we look at a lot of ecosystems approaching it from varying angles. So you have folks in the food sovereignty movements approaching land access. You have folks in the affordable housing space of approaching land access. You have folks in the social purpose real estate approaching land access. And you also have folks in the co-op housing space. But a lot of times, for the food sovereignty movement, social purpose real estate, affordable housing, and the co-op folks, in some instances, are working in isolation. I really want you to share a little bit more around Adinkra Farms, the 42 acres you've built, and what inspired you and your husband to take not just that leap of faith, but to invest in yourselves and to find ways and means to bring our community forward in the spirit of Ubuntu. I am because we are.
Absolutely. Well, part of it, I have to say, is the divine creator and the ancestors speaking to us about it, because we had the opportunity to move out of the city, and I was determined not to do subdivision living because I really like land and I like having that space. And so when we found Adinkra Farm, it was a bit of a wow. It was like a gem, things coming together in a way that we could not have imagined. And although my husband and I had never had the conversation, after we moved here, I started to hear about the vision of the reggae band that he and his friends were in the 70s called Truths and Rights.
Yeah.
And they were the #1 reggae band in Canada at the time, and very progressive and making social commentary and so on. And so one of their mission was to create in relation to the struggle of our people. And one of the conversations they had was that we need to have land and we need to do these things on that land. And it just so happens that we are the ones that acquired the land, and we were in a position financially to support the development of Adinkra Farm. So 2 band members unfortunately have passed, but they were actively involved in coming to Adinkra Farm, helping us set it up. And once we finish our development, we have plans to name certain parts of the place after members of the band in honor of that vision that they had for creating the opportunity of Adinkra Farm. The other inspiration, sorry.
That's incredible.
Yes. The other inspiration came from being community organizers and watching the level of frustration that people have in finding space that we can use, that we can drum, we can do what we do and not have someone say, okay, you have to wrap that up at midnight. Or so here we really have that freedom and that opportunity, and it really does feel different than being in the city. And so that's part of it. So and again, another member of the band is Anan Lololi.
Indeed.
And Anan is the person who started African Food Basket. And we were clients, customers, and so on. But he has been instrumental too in the vision around food sovereignty being a part of Adinkra Farm. So really well-rounded. The other aspects around reclaiming our heritage, about healing, about housing, those issues have come up out of necessity from the community.
Ashe, Ashe. Elder Anan is actually part of this When Elders Speak series. And he's actually not just the founder of the African Food Baskets, but also the chair of the Black Food Sovereignty Movement in Toronto. And just to hear that that Kwame and all those elders had this vision in the 70s, and for it to be actualized in 2023, and actually for the past few decades, also speaks to the resilience and tenacity of our people. And I just give thanks for you and your husband's diligence and the word that I try and teach our children, conscientiousness. So we give thanks. So my last question to you is, what is your call to action for young people across Canada or across the diaspora? What is your call to action?
My call to action is to be informed, to get informed. So I know that the information is not always easily accessible through the normal methods, and you might get some nonsense on your feeds and all of that kind of stuff. So you have to do some digging, you have to be deliberate. ask your elders for the information. There are great books. There are amazing films as well. There's great music that tells our story. So I would say broaden the base of information that's coming into you. Many of the ways that I think information is accessible is through music. And we've had a tradition because a lot of our music, as you would know, comes out of struggle. And so if you listen to some of those songs, they sound good, they're good to dance to, but they also have important messages about our history, about our people, and can point you in a direction of places that you can learn a bit more. So the first thing, because one of the most important things for you to take into life is self-knowledge. And you can't really know yourself without knowing your people as well. Because when you know your people, when you know that history, then you come back to, okay, who am I? How do I fit in? What's my contribution going to be? And those are important questions to be asking yourself as well. And use your parents. I tell young people, use your parents to guide you as well. Because I can tell you my two boys that I birthed, and I look at them as they grow, and I see, I saw that when you were an infant. I saw that when you were one. I saw that in your personality. I have one child that, just as an example, when we would go somewhere, I would say, and they would have a question, I would say, go and ask the person over there in uniform, or go and ask the person behind the desk. And one of my sons would say, Mom, that's why I'm asking you to do it, because you're the mommy, right? And I had another one that used to be like, excuse me, sir, where is, just walk right up and do. So my point being that you just see the personality characteristics, and so your parents have a lot of information to tell you about who you are and why you're here. And so if we start there, I think we're starting in a good place. Learn about the history of your people and ask questions about who you are and why you're here.
Ashe, 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 Madasi, Pa. My elder, I give thanks to the Almighty, our Creator. I give thanks to our ancestors. I give thanks to all the community stalwarts and elders like yourself, whose shoulders we stand on, as we work towards our collective liberation and ultimately our sovereignty. I'm so appreciative of this interview. And yeah, I just give thanks. Thank you so much, Elder Abena.
You are so welcome, Madasi. Have a